Canada's free universal healthcare is collapsing and the consequences could be dire, not just socially. It is having massive economic impacts in Canada, so much so that they're talking about going after retirement programs for Canadians just to make up some of these deficit issues that we're seeing. The economic impacts are spreading into other industries as well. We also just got an announcement today that another company will be leaving Canada to bring their production back down to the United States. Not looking good for Canada's economy. We also have some clips coming out of Canada to warn the Americans because we're seeing some trending things down there that we saw in Canada a few years ago. We should be the canary in the coal mine for you guys. You got to pay attention. There is one thing I got to call out, but be patient with me because I also have a feel-good story. Trump's new project is something that I want to feature. I think it's something that's cool that you actually want to see happening. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
Canada is burning through its young nurses at an alarming rate and struggling to retain them. This is according to a new report from the policy think tank MEI. They say the number of job vacancies tripled between 2018 and 2023, which puts more pressure on an already stressed system. And simply training more nurses won't solve the problem. Better conditions and flexibility are needed, they say. With me now is Dr. Lee Chapman, Canada's Chief Nursing Officer. Good morning. Thanks so much for coming on today. So what do you make of this number? It's pretty staggering when we look at the number of nurses under 35 leaving the workforce.
The numbers are stark, but not surprising. In fact, we have more nurses in this country than we've ever had in the history of Canada.
Did you hear that? So two important things happened in the discussion in this video. They said the numbers are staggering. The numbers are stark. Then she said we have more nurses than we've ever had in the entire history of Canada. So we have more staff than ever. The numbers are staggering and stark. I wonder if they will mention what one of the major issues is. Keep in mind, this is a representative of the nurses. She's supposed to be having her finger on the pulse of what's going on and how we fix these things. Let's see if anything gets mentioned.
But we have a huge problem with retention. And so I think the data speaks to this sort of as a stark reminder that we need to improve the working conditions of nurses.
Okay.
How are we going to do that?
Okay, so what are the factors that are leading to nurses leaving, and why sort of this age group, do you think, doctor? Young nurses, new nurses.
Yeah, I think this is a generation of nurses whose lives, all of our lives have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think there's a different sensibility around how we balance work and life and what we're sort of willing to tolerate when it comes to working conditions. So nurses are facing, there's certainly rising acuity in the workplace, but there's also violence, there's racism, there's ageism.
Yeah, that's what the nurses are dealing with. That's why the nurses are leaving. It's the racism and the ageism. Yeah, that's the big problem that they're dealing with. And here's why I get frustrated at this. Also, trying to blame COVID in 2025 is pretty funny. But the fact is they will give every single reason without calling out the actual reason, which of course is, for the people at home, Operation Curry Bomb. It is mass immigration. I've talked to multiple nurses in person, and not one of them has said they're scared of COVID. Many of them have said it's very frustrating to have to work 12-hour shifts back to back to back. You're overworked. You hardly get any breaks because there's just lineups of people who don't even speak English using the emergency room as basically a family doctor coming in with a sore elbow to the emergency room being like, hey buddy, how I fixed? So maybe there's other reasons they're leaving out of the video.
Both for, early career nurses and late career nurses. And so all of this is sort of coming to bear on the working conditions. And nurses don't have a lot of autonomy over their schedule. And so I think they're fleeing for working conditions where they are able to control their manage their work life and control their schedule in a better way. So whether that's
So if you're curious, this video is 4.5 minutes long. They do not mention the real problem once. The healthcare system is falling apart. It was not built to absorb this level of immigration. And we can show you that it's not a spending issue because people keep saying, oh, well, it's just because they're underfunded. Well, we've got articles today proving that it has nothing to do with them being underfunded. But here's another article saying radiologists warn of rising wait times for MRIs, CTs, and other diagnostic scans. Oh, just the very important scans that help you catch things early that otherwise could be preventable if you catch them early, could be treatable. You could build a plan around it and understand what's going on sooner. But this article even shows there's economic impacts to this as well. Radiologists in Canada are sounding the alarm that the rising wait times, I wonder why, for diagnostic imaging procedures such as MRI and CT scans, saying the holdups hurt patients and the economy. The study conducted by the consulting firm Deloitte estimated that patients who miss work while waiting for diagnostic exam lose nearly $18 billion in aggregate income every year, a hardship that has cost the economy an estimated $64 billion in lost GDP and $6 billion in lost tax revenue. But we're also seeing veteran medical radiation technologists are retiring or burning out, and there aren't enough MRTs being trained in their wake. And we have this study here which shows it's not a spending problem. Canada is spending a lot of money on these programs. Among a group of 31 high-income countries that have universally accessible healthcare, Canada has among the lowest availability of doctors, hospital beds, and most medical technologies, and some of the longest wait times. This despite Canada being among the highest spenders on healthcare. They were able to sort of illustrate this in the chart here. The spending is there, spending as share of the economy. We do have the actual report here that they used for that infographic. It's from the Fraser Institute. Of the 31 high-income universal healthcare countries, Canada ranks among the highest spenders, but ranks poorly on both availability of most resources and access to services. Across 13 indicators measured, the availability of medical resources and timely access to medical services in Canada was generally below the average of the OECD country. In 2023, Canada ranked 27th for the relative availability of doctors, 25th for hospital beds, and dedicated to physical care. In 2022, Canada ranked 27th out of 31 for relative availability of MRIs, and Canada ranked last or close to last on 3 of 4 indicators in timeliness of care. Canada also ranked 8th worst in percentage of patients who waited more than 1 month to see a specialist. Clearly, there is an imbalance between what Canadians get in exchange for the money they spend on the healthcare system. Like I said, the money's being spent, but it's not set up for them to absorb millions of people per year. I have a friend who was just told if he wants to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor, his appointment is in April 2026. And a lot of the people who we've brought in are barely paying any taxes that's going towards the spending of that and getting all of the service. And what's happening? We're seeing that bite back into other programs, and the Liberals are being urged to cut old age security spending in upcoming budget. Now seeing in Ottawa, advocates are calling on Carney Liberals to start with the biggest line item when deciding where to cut spending ahead of the upcoming federal budget. The head of the General Fairness Group of Generational Squeeze told reporters in Ottawa that $80 billion in old age security program desperately needed to be reined in, with federal spending hurling towards a crisis point. It's only hurling towards a crisis point because of bad Liberal policy, as well as mass immigration, and it is being abused on every single level. The massive amount of government spending that has had to keep up with the mass immigration is digging into these programs. So now the boomers, a lot of which voted for Mark Carney, so I feel bad for all of the conservative boomers who have not voted for any of this nonsense, who are at risk of losing their old age security so that we can keep programs alive for immigrants who haven't been paying taxes. The other thing is, allegedly, these are all allegations that I've been hearing online, there's people who've been coming over during this mass immigration who've been changing their date of birth so they can get access to OAS sooner than they otherwise would have been eligible. Also, there's people who have just aged into it with their correct ages who otherwise shouldn't be here, that were brought over, somehow qualified for permanent status and got access to these programs. And it's going to get worse as our tax base. So we've seen that the cost of people having to wait around is having tax-based problems. It's costing money in the economy. And then we're seeing the direct spend of all of these things. The healthcare system will not be able to keep up. And I don't blame Canada's healthcare workers. I don't blame Canada's healthcare system. I blame the Liberal government who is allowing that system to crumble. And I also do think if you are in the healthcare system, you're going to have to start calling out the problems at face value. If you say it's a scheduling issue because you have to work too much, why do you have to work too much? Why are you overworked? What are the issues? Start to bring those forward so we can say, okay, maybe we can't bring in millions of people per year. But like I said, another massive economic blow here. American truck maker to end Canadian production of trucks sold in the US and we are expecting another 300 jobs lost. The American truck maker Paccar Inc. is putting the brakes, on production in Canada and laying off more workers. I'm not laughing at the layoffs, I'm laughing at their pun in this. They're choosing to put a pun in a video where they're talking about layoffs and people losing the job. Maybe figure out the timing. Ahead of a 25% US import tariff scheduled to start next month, the manufacturer based in Bellevue, Washington, told employees at its truck factory in Quebec Wednesday that it will repatriate production of trucks sold in the United States. Keep in mind, again, this is an American company with American IP selling these trucks in the United States back to its US plants, said Daniel Cloutier, Quebec director of Unifor, which represents the plant's workers. Sad to see another 300 jobs lost, but once again, we need to exist inside of reality, Canadians. This is an American company who's choosing to produce their trucks back down in America where they sell into the market. So unfortunately, unless we can bring something to the table that's not just government subsidies, they're going to keep moving down to the US, and this is all happening as unemployment continues to grow. And this is where we get to the videos that are the warning for the Americans, because Americans, look at what we're dealing with here in Toronto, here in Canada. Your healthcare system is falling apart. All of the social services are being strained, not to mention social cohesion generally. But this is what we're seeing in Toronto. Does this look like Canada to you? Interesting. I do wish they didn't put the bruh Toronto there. You would be able to see. But if you look, we've got just a train full of foreign entrepreneurs, which who knows, maybe it's a good thing, because we are going to be getting into a video clip shortly showing how good they are at business once again. But here is another clip. This happened in Edmonton last night with their Diwali fireworks, because again, these guys just don't understand rules, safety, whatever. So they were lighting these off in a residential neighborhood. They had no plan, no structure, and look at what happened. They caused a house fire in a residential neighborhood because of Diwali. And it's like, is this what we're missing out on? No, this is what we're missing out on. This is a parking lot that they left because they don't get permits for these things. They don't get plans. They just left a full parking lot, all of their trash, all of their garbage, again, coming out of Canada. But we're seeing scenes like this start to develop in the United States. But once again, I don't know how Canada would ever survive without these foreign entrepreneurs. We have this video here we will play. Look at this guy, business in action. This is the rise in theft in Canada. Two guys are, they say stealing, I say obtaining inventory of an air compressor in broad daylight from a house in Calgary. Let's listen. Doesn't sound like English they were saying there. What do they do? Hey, buddy, nice front yard, nice air compressor, that's mine now. And then they take it straight to the car, and once again, it is just amazing business 101, 100% free inventory. That's unlimited profit. There's actually no way to calculate the profit that these foreign entrepreneurs make because there's no base level costs. So it's technically infinity profit that these guys just keep doing when they get unlimited free inventory. And I respect that from them, because otherwise Canadians wouldn't have figured that out. Although I will say, stealing tools from yards is a bit of a legacy industry that has existed before these guys showed up. But luckily, they've reminded us how to do it, us Canadians. Speaking of, we've got Rupa here, who constantly brags about how she is as Canadian or more Canadian than anyone else. And she was mad. This is why when you pander, this is why when you cater to these audiences, and it's going to all come together, and this is all warnings for Americans, because we're seeing these political groups have been gaining power, and they are well overrepresented in Canada, and these problems have continued to grow as their representation in government has grown. And we've seen all of these things are encouraged. We obviously know a lot of the reasons we've talked about here, but here's why it's such a problem. She is talking about how she is a perfect Canadian, but a Diwali greeting from PP at 11:46 p.m. shortly after I asked where it was. He lumped it in with all other festivals, listing it last when the most important Hindu festival. The timing and phrasing are striking amid rising anti-Hindu hate in Canada, buddy. So keep in mind, she is always talking about how Canadian she is. Now, a Canadian politician making the post, which first of all, Pierre shouldn't have made that post anyways, she's saying it's not enough. She wants more. It's not enough of a representation for her that he put this tweet out. It needs to be directly as she requested it, because otherwise it wouldn't have been the perfect best announcement, which is why when this American account called this out here, he said, the India lobby is not being taken seriously enough. They hold immense power in both political parties at both the federal and local level. And that's the other thing. In Canada, we constantly saw that. They kept winning mayor races, which we just saw. They kept becoming city council seats because they choose to organize and lobby. They'll put their disagreements and problems they have from back home that they keep bringing over here aside just to get their people into power. And then they'll start to go, okay, now that we got people in power, we can start to talk about these problems. So it's not just federal, it's local too. The only reason we haven't turned into Canada, remember, Canada, yet is the size of our country, 100%. That will change if the administration doesn't figure it out quickly. So even though you guys know we're huge Trump fans on the channel, I was not happy to see a Diwali event in the White House. Personally, I think it has no place in the White House. Americans, comment down below. What did you think of that? Again, I still like Trump. I just didn't like this because I think personally, personal opinion, this has no place in the White House. And again, they are extremely organized and extremely political. They know what political power means. And that's why in Canada, they are massively overrepresented, and he's 100% right. There are still millions coming to the US. The difference is your guys' population is just almost 9 times ours. It's like 8 and something. And so it doesn't seem as drastic. When we got millions, it started to wipe out towns and cities. Like I said, I wanted to finish on this piece of good news here. And this has to do with Trump's new project and what he's doing at the White House. I actually think this is really cool. And again, this is why I like Trump so much, because the idea of sharing beauty here and rebuilding, extending and building such an important US landmark, it shows that Trump really does care about the US, which is why I didn't like what we saw in the White House. But this is a beautiful story.
It's the single biggest change to the White House since President Theodore Roosevelt built the West Wing. Bulldozers and jackhammers are tearing down parts of the East Wing to make way for President Donald Trump's grand ballroom.
You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound.
The $250 million project will be able to host more than...
If this is what the final product is, I think it looks really nice. European-inspired American sensibilities.
900 guests. At 8,300 square meters, it will more than double the size of the entire White House complex. All of it, Trump claims, will be privately funded. Potential donors were recently invited to dine with the president.
You've given tremendous amounts of money to see a ballroom built for the first time at the White House.
Though Trump is technically just a tenant, he has transformed the executive mansion, turning the Oval Office into a gilded monument. This is what it looked like during his...
It actually looks so much better. Everybody was saying like, oh, it looks so gaudy. He added so much gold. It's like, I mean, looks nice. Another thing that I thought was a no-brainer is if I was from a wealthy family and they were taking private donors to rebuild a wing of the White House, yeah, I'd want my family's name attached to that. Imagine that. You got to contribute to the building of the White House. That would be such an awesome legacy building thing. So no wonder they were able to get the private funding.
His first term. He also paved over the Rose Garden and erected 2 giant flagpoles on the grounds.
I never heard of any president changing the house like this fella here is doing. Never heard of it.
It's not taxpayer money, so what's the problem?
Other presidents have made their mark on the White House. Ford built an outdoor pool. Nixon added a bowling lane. Obama brought in a basketball court.
No way.
None has gone as far as Trump, whose push to reshape the country includes reshaping the White House in ways that will last long beyond his time in office.
To me, what Trump's doing is an awesome example of building legacy and trying to leave a better country for the next generation. And it feels like he wants to have an impact. And I understand the average American's not going to get to go to the ballroom at the White House, but the symbolism of investing back in your country, especially from the top down like that, it shows that he does care, which again is why I did not like the Diwali stuff, because take Canada as a warning. Canada should be your canary in a coal mine. I'm telling you, things are not going well here. We're seeing our healthcare systems fall apart. We are seeing social cohesion at an all-time low. Crime rates, as we saw from the foreign entrepreneurs, are getting so bad that officially now we are seeing higher crime rates in Canada than in the US. And the reason why I care about it so much is I want America to stay America. America, at the end of the day, still is the beacon of freedom, still is the beacon of opportunity, and it still is that area that we can look to and say, hey, there's Americans, there's what they do, and we can see Trump's obviously trying to rebuild America, but let's make sure America stays America. If you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.